Hi, I'm Carmel Masiti. I work at the ICCR. I am the project manager of the Lexicon Project, and this is the project that we're talking about today. It involves documenting those words that teachers use to talk about the classroom. So we're documenting the professional vocabulary of teachers. It's the words they use in conversation with each other when they talk about the practice of the classroom and the problems of the classroom.
Hi, I'm Amanda Belton. I'm a data scientist collaborating with Carmel on the Lexicon Project and visualising the data.
So what you were presented with was the term encouraging and a description of that term. So you were able to see that in that visualisation. It is one of the 61 terms that teachers use, and for each of the terms we have, like a dictionary would, a simple description of the practice and then examples from the classroom that illustrate that practice. And for encouraging, an example from the classroom is something like when a teacher comments, "Keep trying, good effort." The teacher's making clear to a student the progress they've made in a specific area. It's also one of the terms, with all our 61 terms, we organise them in categories. We just call them organisational categories. It was a way of communicating the lexicon. And encouraging turns up under classroom management as well as teaching strategies.
And I think you picked this term. Do you remember why you picked this one? Was there something about this one that you appealed to you?
The fact that teachers, because we generated the terms with a group of teachers and researchers, so they looked at video in order to stimulate their thinking about the terms that teachers use. This is something that they identified when looking at the classroom and looking at teacher practice. Now, if they're identifying this and they're choosing to name what they see, it means that it's important to them. So the Japanese term that you just noticed is, I'll try my best, I think it's osei, and it literally translates as teaching each other. And it refers to the time in a Japanese classroom when a pair of students is working together, but then one student explains something to the other. We're very interested in what's named by researchers and teachers around the world, because again, we're trying to understand what it is that they notice enough to value and name. And if that's something that, although classrooms do look familiar from around the world, if teachers are naming something that we don't name here in Australia, it means that they have the opportunity to reflect on that practice. They have, because it's a named practice, they can talk to each other about it. Whilst if we don't have a name, it's very difficult to reflect on this practice and by extension, think about doing it better. So that's why we value knowing what other practices are named by people around the world.
So when we started our collaboration, Carmel, this was the first term you showed me, and I think that joy of sharing a term like this is something that we wanted to then convey with the term. And so as a finished term, we worked with the art from a Finnish artist for the Mary Mako design house, and chose a snowberry tree as the background and the words as blossoms. And again, this came from your explanations of the lexicon as a body of knowledge, and these terms coming out of this body of knowledge that's part of the professional practice of teachers. Now, I can't pronounce the term. What is the term?
It's duoraha, and it literally translates as work piece. The closest English translation is good working climate. So the Finnish like to, well, what they did that was a little bit different from the other communities is they were naming the characteristics of the classroom. And this one, I just think really appealed to me because it doesn't represent a quiet or silent classroom. It actually means what needs to happen so that every child can work, is allowed to work and can work peacefully on whatever it is that they need to do. And so there's a slight difference there. So it's the conditions in the class that allow for that focused studying. And I just thought, it's something that we should all be talking about. Like they had this word, and I'm sure that Australian teachers would like their classroom to be described in this way, but we don't have a term such as this one. And I think it could really make a difference if we knew that Finnish teachers have this term and we can learn about theirs, and it helps us reflect on our own classrooms as well. So learning about the language or vocabulary that others use helps us reflect on our own Australian classroom.
And I think it's this term in particular, and talking about the climate of a classroom, that helped us come to this visualization of the language as a seasonal piece of flora, as a tree, you know, as a finished tree in winter or a cherry blossom tree in spring.
I have a bouquet of methodologies for you. My role is a hybrid academic professional, and as a research co-designer, it's a doer-thinker hybrid with theory and practice integrated. This work has been a second-person action research into the Lexicon Project research data. The rituals and artifacts of an agile approach have been powerful tools in developing a visualization unique to the lexicon data. It hasn't been done before, it's not a standard process, so practices like time boxing, prioritising the backlog, and iterative design have given us structure and a path to a usable visualization. As a maker, the blog entries, these videos are an account of my practice to show how I'm improving my iterative approach, my understanding of education research data, and to show how I made a PowerPoint file that can be adapted by other researchers.
What advice would you have for other researchers?
I would definitely encourage them to do this, and I would also encourage anyone to dream big. What would you love to see? Because I think in a way that we were just able to kind of explore so many different things and explain what appealed to us about the data. And I think you were able to turn that into a vision. So it's not just like the data can be written, it can be read, but working with the data scientists, it can be seen, and something that's wonderful for any researcher to explore. Because I think in some ways you start to think about the power of your data or your results or whatever it is that you've done.